you say yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd be mad and a half won't do.
Hey, friends, welcome to the Big Event Podcast. It is a virtual online lounge. I'm your bartender, your host, Chris. Some of them called me Crisco back in the day, but you don't have to do that. Chris is cool. And I tell you what, let's first start off with the lead in music. That's Michael O'Hara and the Sheiks, my very good friend, Michael O'Hara, his wonderful band, the late great Leslie Martin Dunnard on lead guitar, Nick Ferber on bass, Rob Sanders on drums. Nick was a fantastic bassist himself, and Rob could really keep the band in the pocket and keep things moving. What a great band. If you saw them in the 1980s in New Orleans, St. Louis, Chicago, Memphis, all up and down that scene, you were treated, because it was a big time performance on a small stage. They played some big stages, but we got to see them up close and personal. They were outstanding. Michael's a good friend. He'll be a guest here at the Big Event Lounge eventually. So I wanted to introduce myself today. We're going to get the podcast started real soon. I'm doing this first video just to get my sound right and talk a little bit about what our show is going to be about. So let's go back to where the name came from. Where did the Big Event Lounge name come from? When I was a young man, I attended bar in New Orleans. Well, it didn't start that way. I was working in a bank, and I would stop in this business person's lounge that was right down the street, grab a beer, and then head home. And of course, all the people I worked with went there. There were people in the insurance business, the technical business, technical for the 80s, but there were companies that were doing computer-based things. It was just this incredible collection of business people after hours. And some would go home early, some would stay late, some would stay all night. That's all good people. Everybody just had their own ideas and things that they wanted to do. But I was working in this bank, and I had 2 kids and married, and I got to tell you, we weren't making a lot of money. And the bartender quit at the big event, and I went and asked the owner, CJ, really cool guy, man, 6'5", 375-ish pounds, Italian guy. I went and asked him. I said, "Hey, man, can I bartend here? And I want to make some extra money for my family." Well, we ended up making enough money bartending that the banking job kind of went away. I couldn't do both. I was burning the candle at both ends, and there's just no way I could have kept up with both. So I attended bar for a good number of years and made a lot of friends in that place. I already had a lot of friends there, made a lot more friends. Beside the business people, there were softball teams that would come in during the week. Really cool people there. Of course, my crowd started to come around, right? The people I hung around. So it was kind of an older crowd when I got there. And then when my crowd started to come in, it kind of mixed up, and it gave it a new dynamic. And it was just a really, really cool spot. So CJ started the big event with the idea of, the theme was, it was big events. You go into bar, and laminated into the bar were like different newspaper articles. And one of them's the Hindenburg blowing up. One of them's, the end of the war, or whatever, Lincoln's assassination, whatever the big thing in history was at the time of that newspaper headline. And it was all laminated into the bar. But the thing that people didn't know was that the big event was the birth of his daughter. And that's what he named the club after, the birth of his daughter. So really cool thing that CJ did there. CJ has passed away, but you know what? The name's not being used. A lot of good friends were made, and every day after work, everybody gathered. They would talk about the big events that were going on in the world, whether it was in sports or politics or you name it. And if there wasn't big events, they were just good friends who talked about their day, what's going on in their business, what's going on with their investments, whatever the case might be. And we're going to try to recreate that online. We're going to open up the virtual lounge, the big event virtual lounge. And when I say big event, I use that name because we needed a name, and we're going to cover big events. There's a lot of big things that are going on in the world today. In sports, we got the Stanley Cup coming up, right? We just football just had the draft, and teams are going to OTAs, and it's already time to start talking about NFL football, especially if you do fantasy. And we're going to talk a lot about fantasy football here. My best friend and I started a fantasy league over 30 years ago, and we still have a lot of the same people in the league now. Unfortunately, we lost him, and we're going to name that segment of the Big Event Lounge. And he used to come to the big event. Excuse me. His name was Lucian. We're going to call it Big Lou's Fantasy Corner, and that's where we're going to discuss fantasy for the week. We're going to talk about current events, like I mentioned. We're going to talk about pop culture. Hey, are you watching the Dutton Ranch? Beth and Rip are kicking butt again, right? Really interesting, very intense. It picked up where Yellowstone left off. It's like they've had some other spin-offs since then. I think this captures that feeling that you had with Yellowstone, right? So there's gonna, we're gonna talk about things like that. Anything in the Taylor Sheridan universe, I watch it. I love it. It's Landman, Yellowstone, of course, Mayor of Kingstown. Wow, their last season was fantastic. Jeremy Renner, just off the hook. Really good stuff. So we'll talk about pop culture, right? That includes music. My God, I love rock and roll. Rock and roll is not dead, friends. If you want to find rock and roll, it's out there to be found. All the streaming systems have all the rock you can imagine. We'll help you find it. There's a lot of new, cool stuff, and we'll talk about it. You can't always play it or use it, or your stream or your videos will get dinged. So we got to be careful what we show and what we play. And we're going to follow the rules, Mr. YouTube, and Mr. Rumble. We're going to, I started off in banking, right? And investments intrigued me. I'm a numbers guy. And, the stock market, I got into it very naive. I just thought that when businesses did well, the stock price went up. And when businesses did bad, the stock price came down. And of course, the economy could affect it. Little did I have a clue about the kind of manipulation that goes on in the stock market. I've learned a lot about it. I've had a lot of personal experience in fighting it. And we'll talk about that because that's a big event in your life. If you've got money in a retirement account, you might say, "Well, man, Chris, I don't invest in stocks." Yeah, well, maybe the fund that your retirement account is invested in stocks. And there's some people that do some things that you're going to want to learn about. You're going to want to learn about for sure. Hey, we talk about the stock market. What about the real estate market? Wow, it's tough. It is a tough time in the real estate market. My business for many years was the wine industry, which we'll get into as well. But the stock market, the real estate market, wow, it is tough right now. And you might say it is not a good time to buy. Well, that might not be true. Now might be a great time to buy. Yeah, interest rates are high. Yeah, the market is flooded with inventory, but that creates a buying opportunity for people who have cash and investors. So there's always, when there's bad for one group of people, then there's maybe good for another group of people. And if you're a buyer, a cash buyer right now, like, yeah, this current situation could be a good time for you to pick some investment properties. And we'll talk about that, of course. Real estate's one of the things that I do. We talked about the wine industry, politics. Nah, nothing's going on in the world of politics, is there? Okay, we'll talk politics. I'm passionate. I'm opinionated. You'll figure it out as time passes. I hope you like me if you disagree with me, because I like you if you disagree with me. The only thing I ever ask is that you be respectful and fair. That's what would be expected of if you walked in the big event lounge in the 1980s. Come in, be respectful, be fair, love your brother, your sister, and treat them accordingly. If you don't, well, you know what happens. The guy was 6'5", 375 pounds. You were probably going to leave. Now, we don't have to do that these days, but there are ways to put people out. And yeah, we don't want to do that. So let's not even talk about that. But look, that's what this podcast is going to be. It's going to be um, audience participation. We'll get around to how that's going to work. We're still figuring that out. But there's going to be audience participation through the chat, or maybe guests even sometimes. And speaking of guests, we'll have Michael O'Hara of the Sheiks. I talked to Michael when I came up with the idea to do this podcast, and he said, I would love to be a guest on your podcast. So Michael will join us at some point. I'm going to work on setting that up. What are other things? Of course, the news cycle never ends. We talked about sports. We're going to be all over sports, fantasy, especially UFC. I love UFC. There has been some great UFC fights just recently. It's storm season, and the tornado chasers are out in full force. You guys watch any of those videos? It is insane. Reed Timmer has developed a car he calls the Dominator that's actually got armor on it, and it lowers itself and sucks to the ground. And what they do is try to get in the direct path of a tornado. Absolutely amazing, riveting. I can't get enough of watching that kind of stuff. Self help. We're not going to dive too far down that rabbit hole today, but I've helped some people in the past, and it's not because I'm super smart or anything. I help them with challenges that I could relate to, and I tell you what, nothing feels better than to share with another person and to see them work their way through issues in their life. So there'll be times when we get pretty serious and we'll get into self help, and that's cool. We're going to cover anything that's trending. In the 1980s, at the time of the big event, um, trending was what was on the newspaper, on your 5 o'clock news, or word of mouth. Today, we got all these wonderful apps, Twitter, X, whatever we want to call it, and we'll follow what's trending and we'll talk about it. We're going to have features. We're going to have the fantasy football corner, Lou's fantasy corner. We'll have a happy hour. I don't know how that's going to be yet. We'll put it together. I've come up with the idea for Dart Night. We had Dart Night at the big event, and Dart Night is when we're going to look at things people say or do that are extremely stupid, and we're going to throw darts at them. Virtual darts. You know what I'm saying. There'll be a last call where we bring up a topic that'll be, this is your last chance to get in. And of course, we'll have the last call before we shut it down for the night and get ready for the next day. Look, the big event virtual lounge, the online live podcast is going to be where we discuss the big news, the small news, whatever makes us happy. And we're going to treat each other good while we do it. All right? Does that make sense? So I think that that's going to be enough for a first video to get us started. Did I mention it'll be live? Yeah, I did. It's going to be a live podcast most of the time. Sometimes we'll put out some videos. So let's do this. Let's wrap up with the Sheiks. We started with them. The song was called 99 and a Half Won't Do. It was taped live in Baton Rouge. That was a live performance. And we're going to pick a song now. There was a local radio station in New Orleans that started featuring local bands. And this was the Sheiks' contribution to that album. All right. Whoa. That was still 99 and a half playing in the background, looping, right? So we're going to start with What Does It Take? We're going to finish with What Does It Take? See, I'm still figuring this out. And this was a test for me too, to see how many times I'm going to say, to see how many times I'm going to get stuck, or I'm going to screw something up with this dashboard. So that's happened a few times, but hey, we're going to have fun. It's going to be live. We're going to make all kinds of mistakes, but we're going to have a good time. So let's hit what does it take? And we'll see you next time coming live soon.